Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Barrington Select Board meeting of Monday, November 14th, 2022. Call to order. Roll call attendance. It's in here.
Yellow's here.
Clearly here.
Mantrick here. Mr. Bush is not here this time. Can I ask you all to join me in pledge allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Agenda review. Any questions or concerns?
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Then move right along. Okay, next part of the agenda is public comment. Public comment will last a total of 15 minutes. Anyone making comment and address permitted to speak by the chair. The speaker first needs to recite their name and address for the record. They should address their comments to the chair and the select board as a body and not to individual member. Each speaker should be provided a single opportunity for comment limited to 3 minutes. Visitors should not expect a response to their comments or questions, and the select board may not have discussed or taken a position on a matter. Public comment is not a two-way dialogue between speakers, select board, and or the town administrator. Chair will preserve strict order and decorum at all select board meetings. Seeing violent, disruptive, disorderly comments, those likely to invoke violence, disruption, or disorder are not permitted and will not be tolerated. Questions? Anyone have comments amongst the audience present? Mr. Russell?
Yes. This is likely to induce happiness. Robert Russell, 99 Toll Road. Okay, just a quick one. I was at the polls this past Monday, just holding signs. And this is the second time I've done that. And I just wanted to say how impressed I was with the town employees, volunteers, the people there who do work, but I know they don't get paid a lot. I just wanted to name a few. Kim, I know I won't pronounce your name right, but Caracas, Rebecca Nelson, Deborah Griffin, Rebecca Gomez, Ron St. Jean, all the people he pulls in again. The people who were nominated, Heath, Len, Cassandra, Mike, and Dave, just using first names. And I wanted to single one person out. This is in a good way, and you may be surprised, but I want to mention Jack Gale. Jack and I met a couple of years ago. We kind of had a little moment. It was a little bit difficult, but we've since, we moved on. And I've done 3 things where I've stood out with Jack for a very prolonged period of time. And we actually have a lot of things alike that we can talk about, but he never stops moving. He is constantly directing traffic. He's helping elderly people out of their cars. He's assisting disabled people to the front of the line. Again, I know he's not there for the money. He's a veteran. And I just wanted to say, everyone did a great job, but I wanted to mention that Jack Gale probably doesn't get a lot of thank yous, and he should. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Anyone else have comments at this point? Anyone online? If you're on Teams, if you'll push the raise your hand thing, be recognized. If you're on telephone, you'll press *6. Please be recognized. Come off mute and we will address. Recognize you.
Not seeing anything virtually, Mr. Chair.
Not seeing anything either. In that case, we'll close the first session of public comment. There will be another opportunity toward the end of the meeting. Public hearing. I don't see anyone from the school board here. I'll report later. part of my report. Excuse me, budget presentation. Kim?
That was mine.
Oh,
Not-
wow.
Not so, if you have a nut allergy, don't have any.
Okay.
A little protein contribution.
That's good.
Good comment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So while Kim settles in, this is the chapter 18 of the budget binder. You'll also find a copy of the advisory budget committee minutes from last Tuesday. Unfortunately, the budget committee meeting was the same day as voting. So some of us took a break and answered some of Kim's questions, but I don't believe there are any outstanding questions, but I do believe Kim has one proposed change that she'd like to ask for tonight. And if we're all ready, I'll turn over to Kim.
Wait,
So no questions as far as the town clerk budget is, no issues. So the request is for the election budget. I think I want to increase the election printing coding line by $1,100 because this last turnout we had at the general election, it's very out of character. We haven't had that much of a turnout in years.
Line item, please.
And the last four are 4550. So it's 414003 4550. Want to increase it to 6,500. We need to make sure we print enough ballots for the town election next year. I do not want to have to photocopy like we did several years ago. That was a nightmare. I just want to really be prepared. It's well worth the cost to have a little more than have to be there for hours and hours and counting multiple pages. Trust me, I don't know if anyone was here for that. That was a nightmare. I would rather avoid that at all costs.
And one note on that, the state for general elections, the state sends us ballots. And we always joke because they use some formula to decide how many ballots to send. We just never really know what it is. We want access to the formula because we have to determine the number of ballots for the local elections. Anyways, the midterm election that we just had, they sent us a ballot for every single registered voter. Now-
And then some.
We ended up with, 30% surplus ballots. Which tomorrow we'll find out if the
Yes,
state
they're
will take
coming.
our surplus ballots as
We
well.
Take them all away because there's a recount. So
Right.
we don't do that because it's a state election. So I'm kind of happy to take them away.
Right.
So I don't have to maintain them for 2 years. So
So the state similarly is erring on the side of we want to make sure that we have enough printed ballots. So that's a trend that they're seeing as well.
that would just be helpful.
Yeah, so we're receiving a new page.
If the select board is amenable to that change, then it will be updated to reflect the change.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
no, I think that's reasonable. What do we have, 2 elections next year? Just one?
I count the deliberative sometimes too,
Yeah,
but there's just the town.
okay.
That's all it should be.
Do you need a motion or anything else, Mr. Chair?
Until we present the full budget.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
all right.
I think that's good.
Nothing else really, I believe that I'm asking for necessarily. I just want to give you a heads up for 2024. I'm going to request to be able to lease poll pads to help us out with the presidential primary, the general election. And I'm debating on the regular September primary right before the presidential one. We may want a few others, maybe 3 at that one, but I want 6 more at each of the presidential elections. I'd like to lease them. I put into the company for a quote. They'll get back to me, but as you saw, we may do, but if we had a few more poll pads, the poll pads moved them through. Nobody ever was standing in line because there was no booths. It's just that there were so many people. They constantly were flowing through because of the poll pads. But we need poll pad workers and then we need more people working the paper checklist than we do really poll pad workers because that's where they slow down and the state requires us to do that. One day, maybe they'll take it away, but the poll pads would be, I just want you to have that in your head. Well, 2 years. Next year I'll be asking for that.
Let's see, that saves me from asking about it.
Right.
Right.
Good.
I was gonna.
Well,
ask about it.
Oh, good.
The other question I would have.
Don't have a quote though. Don't have any money.
No, not the, is we also will need to plan for a lot more workers.
You think? Yes, yes,
So,
definitely.
think about that.
Oh, yeah.
when you're-
Yeah, supposedly Ron turned people away. We did not plan on what we had at all. Never expected that.
Oh,
Never
good.
expected that. So hopefully people will still serve, have a lot of interest.
It's the first 4 hours of murder.
Well, yeah, plus.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
plus, oh, yeah.
But people, I don't know, I haven't had any people heard that they've complained. Most people were, because they were moving, they never stood still, so that was helpful. Because
Not like Derry.
Hmm?
Not like Derry.
Oh,
Poor Derry was, they caught the flack of the turnout. Well, there was just one story about people waiting in line
Oh.
and it kind of like took off like wildfire. And now everybody, you would think that Derry runs a terrible election, but I know that's not the case. Right.
But they have one location for all wards. They put
Mhm.
all the wards into one location, which I don't understand how they do that. but-
And they've been trying to split it.
Showed- It showed on the street, traffic from the air and everything
Oh,
else.
yeah.
And then you had all the people lined
So
up
see,
and they had,
It
they had
worked well
control
for
of all
us. We
those
were busy,
people to
but
vote
let me do
after
that.
the time.
Right.
I think it is a good idea to be planning ahead, because there are a number of people who were either on crutches or, some other device. And we pulled those people out to come in line, but then there were other people where their disability was not visible. So I
Correct.
had some elders come and say,
Yeah,
I know I don't look like it, but I really can't stand this long. So,
and again, there's nothing we can do because we're gonna have that at the primary for the president and then for the general. They just kind of have to plan. We got them through very quickly though. If you think about how many people there was for hours, like you said, 4 or 5 hours steady. We never had a moment where there was nobody there. Never saw that. Don't remember that ever.
And one of the things too, that we'll work with the school on for definitely the presidential election, but probably the next midterm election too, is the school was closed. There weren't kids at the school, but they still had parent-teacher conferences. So that added a lot of traffic flow during the earlier part of the day. And we went for a period of time where there was no parking available anywhere. People were parking on the grass. And so that's something that we'll work with the school. Maybe they can have conferences at a different building, and we'll ask them, what they might be amenable to for the traffic component, let alone the volume.
Especially the two, the presidential
Mhm.
primary and then the general. That's very important. I can't remember it would be helpful if they could close because it's going to be even worse than what we have.
Mhm.
So,
Kim, is lease better than owned?
yes, when you buy, the cost is roughly, because I did get another one, thank God I have 6, so that's very good. There's a $300 service contract every year for each pad. I don't think it'd be worth it unless everything goes crazy and they keep coming out, which would be nice, but I don't foresee that. But the lease for the big elections, because that's what they had told me when I first bought them, they recommend it. If you wanted to lease, it makes more sense, because I don't think we're gonna need 12 for town elections and even for a regular election. Unless, like I said, people are really getting out there voting like they did, which was welcome.
Well, a lot of towns will be looking to lease and.
Well, because But remember not every town, very few towns, 10 or less do poll pads in the state. You have to remember that. And they said, because I'm a customer, I will have first preference to be able to lease it. And I've already asked them, I want to get a quote, so I get my name in there to make sure I secure them, because I don't want to wait till next year going, hey, I need them. So I want to make sure I'm going to get them.
Good question.
Anyone else? Thank you so much.
Nothing? Okay.
Appreciate it.
So yes, are you looking to increase that budget line then? Or you'll vote on it?
I think
I'll update the materials to reflect it, and they'll make the final decision through the end of the budget process.
Make a decision, totally. But I think you have a sense of where we are.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good.
What's that?
Second person to address the group.
So Jessie Tennis is joining us virtually, so she has one of the lightest budgets due to the hard work of the Recreation Commission. So this is chapter 19 in your budget binder. And you'll notice that, again, starting a trend that the Recreation Department and Commission started 2 years ago, the only operating budget expenses are for the 3 positions and wages and benefits. All other operating costs are paid for through the revolving fund, which is user fees from the programs that they offer. So Jesse, when you're ready.
Awesome. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Great. So I believe I know all of you, but however, a brief introduction that my name is Jessica Tennis and I'm the recreation director here in town. As Connor had mentioned, the budget is pretty light, so I'm hoping to only take a few minutes of your time. As you can see, our budget, as Connor had mentioned, is just made up of the wages and benefits for 2 full-time employees, as well as a part-time 25-hour-a-week administrative assistant. With that said, this current budget season, the Recreation Commission did consider asking for a capital reserve to be established for the community park. With the amount of, people that have been attending that park and that playground area, we've really seen a lot of, mulch maintenance, those type of things that have really started to financially accumulate. However, after reviewing the 2023 proposed budget and capital reserve requests, we felt that this wasn't really the best year for us to go ahead and move forward with that, and have decided to wait for future budgets to have that discussion. But I would.
Go ahead, Jessica.
What was that?
Sorry.
What was
No,
that?
I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
Okay. So since we didn't move forward with that request, that is the only budget that the budget lines that are in the proposed 2023 budget, for a total of $197,411. I would just like to take this opportunity to just, explain what the department does with that $197,000. The department works really, really hard to try to meet the needs of as many residents as we can. We try really hard to try to get as much feedback and implement that feedback in as many creative ways that we can. So this past year, we've been working really hard to meet the needs, the requests of the needs assessment and strategic plan. Some examples of those are installing the shade structures on the community playground, working with the highway department to level the field on Ramsdale Lane so that way we can have more communal use. We have also updated the recreation office and conference space to allow for more of like a registration private conference area, instead of having all of that be within the same office building that, or the same room that everybody else is in. So those are some of the like physical attributions that we've been bringing to the town. But in addition to that, we've really been kind of focusing on the community engagement and working collaboratively with as many organizations as possible. This year, we've started working with the ECLC to start kicking off a gardening club. Our hopes are to start offering, fresh and healthy vegetables for the people that utilize the food pantry to be able to go and kind of access as they attend the food pantry each week. So we hope to, start getting that harvested middle of next year and start offering that for people starting in the summertime. We've also worked collaboratively with the Tricentennial Committee, the Christmas Dove, the PTO, the Library Foundation, and many others to offer events like the recent Spooky Walk. We have the upcoming Polar Express drive-through event. We have the egg hunt, the Deck the House contest, and other programs of that nature. Honestly, watching families make those lasting memories is truly what is most rewarding for us, and we just can't, we can't get enough of it. So we really look forward and thank those opportunities that we have with those organizations to continue to offer those. But overall, in 2020, the rec department really just tried to focus on recreation within Barrington and making the necessary updates and improvements that were recommended through that needs assessment and strategic plan. We look forward to continuing to bring value and looking forward to this, possible new community center or community downtown area, and really just appreciate the community's support and participation throughout this past year. We look forward to another great year. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
I have nothing.
Questions?
I don't either.
Nice job, Jessica. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda would be the budget presentation. Susan, wanna join us here on the firing line?
So this is chapter 20 in your budget binder. And the library trustee chair had sent out some updated materials answering some questions from the advisory budget committee meeting. So those will be updated to the budget binder as well. I forwarded them to the select board ahead of this meeting. And I know Ms. Gaudiel will speak to that, I'm sure.
The one we're looking at should have a date of 1 July or 1 November.
Yes, I'm Betty Yellow, and I'm currently the chair of the Library Board of Trustees. I'm joined by Amy Inglis, who many of you know, and is the processing materials at the library. And of course, Amy was the library director for about 20 years before she sat down to work part-time. As you know, the libraries, our most recent library director, Melissa, left us early October. So the original budget that you were shared was a document that Melissa put together and was reviewed by the trustees. Since her departure, the trustee treasurer, who's Susan Frankel in the audience today, and I have been meeting weekly with the staff, Wendy as interim director, and we asked Amy to work full-time to try and cover. We basically have 2 full-time positions vacant at the library at this time. So it's been all hands on deck. We're still many hours below our authorized hours, but are managing. This did give us the opportunity to review the budget in excruciating detail. So what I prepared and is up on the screen, and you also have, is basically a highlighting of items that changed in our new proposed 2023 budget from 2022, changes of 10% or more. And I thought it would be most useful for us to focus on those changes, although we are more than happy to review any line item, whether there's a change or not. To start with, as you know, the most of the budget of the library is comprised of staff, wages and benefits. And that is where we are really suggesting significant changes. As we have analyzed the positions, and quite honestly, the challenges we're facing in recruiting for those positions, the director and the technology library assistant. We also have analyzed some rearrangement that we need to make in staffing and responsibilities. So our proposal is to move the processor position from part-time to full-time, to a full-time 40-hour week position. Any move like that increases the potential cost of the employee benefits because insurance, as you know, becomes involved. We have taken the full-time library technology library assistant position and moved it from full-time to part-time. The logic in that touches later on our contracts line. We have outsourced an aspect of that job dealing with maintaining the network of the library. That was something we really should have done years ago. It's a level of technical skill that is best outsourced. So that position goes from a 40-hour a week position to a 34 hours a week position. So those are the major changes on the staffing. You don't see an increase in on this chart of full-time staff because quite honestly, we traded out the full-time library technology with full-time processor position. So that really didn't go up much. It really is reflected in the part-time staff. Our earlier proposal to you had an additional position added, a part-time paid. We've eliminated that request. We did test it out this year and found that once we got the library pages finally fully staffed and they're getting those people through training, that we don't need the page. We think we can manage without that. So it's really a focus on the technology and the processor position. Benefits, as I mentioned, of course, go up. Because we know Amy and she's already here, we were able to trim that down as to what level of plan is needed. For the 2 vacant positions, the technology person would only, as of 34 hours, would only be eligible for the single plan. So that's easy to project. We are still searching, are in the interview process on the library director. So that is budgeted as assuming the person takes the highest level of benefits. We won't know that. We hope to have that decision made in early December. And at that point, we'll be able to make the appropriate adjustment there. Before I go on, does anybody want to have any questions about the staffing at the library?
You did do an interview, or you're about to do an interview?
We have been interviewing for the library director, and also for the technology position. We are, really, we've narrowed it down, and we expect we're going to be able to, we hope,
Lindsay Cunningham.
within, in December, in early December, we hope to have a final decision. Anything else on staffing?
Oh, Ms. Gaudiella, George, please.
George, yes.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. I didn't have my hand up. I just waited till you got finished.
You didn't hit
Earlier in the year, you, promoted several other people on the step raise and what have you. Now, are they going to be included for the upcoming year for a step raise again come March? Or is it your plan to have a delay or just to go in March?
What we did, thank you, George, for bringing this up, because I forgot to
I
mention.
hope.
No, I really do want to thank you. We made two changes, and if you have a chance to look at that, the sort of Q&A, I mentioned I wanted to, just as general information. The library trustees, of course, have the authority on wages and benefits for library staff. What we did this summer was we took the page positions. We have 2 pages, they're both part-time positions. And they were classified as grade 1. So you can imagine grade 1, step 1, you can't get any lower paid in this, in town. We looked at those and we decided that those positions really should be at grade 2, step 1. Because we knew we had adequate funds this year, we went ahead and moved them into grade 2. The starting salary for grade 2, I'm gonna forget, is like, I got it down here, but it's like.
Grade 2, step 1, $13.12.
$13.12. They were under $13. Now, that's not a very high salary. And if you've been in the library, the desk clerks are doing a lot of work that requires a certain level of skill. They're certainly working with the circulation system, working with patrons, making recommendations, and shelving books. And while shelving books sounds like at home, like we just throw it on the shelf, if a book is not placed in the absolutely correct position on that shelf, it is a lost item. It's like it doesn't exist anymore because you can't find them. So those things require a level of skill, and we thought it still is pretty low paid, but we felt it merited that step 2. So my answer to your question, George, with those positions is they are now at grade 2, step 1, and come April, they would go to grade 2, step 2, which is a rousing, I think, $13.57 or something like that, I think, on the new scale. The other position that we have reclassified, not from where it is this year, but from within the new wage scale that you just approved, is the library director. The library director has been grade 10, and of course, whatever years of service. I did look in detail at the evaluation you had done by the consultant. Certainly noted that the recreation director's position has been moved into grade 11 from 10. We feel that the director of the library should be at that same position. Most importantly, and we're seeing this in the market, we will not be able to hire a library director at the low end of grade 10. So what we are looking at there is we want to move it into 11. We think that's the appropriate grade for the position. However, we don't want it to cost more. So we'll be hiring that person. Well, initially, I guess it'll be in grade 10 because that's where we are until April. But come April, they would go to the step in grade 11 that is essentially where they would be in grade 10. I don't know if you're understanding what I'm saying, but basically we're not talking about moving the person and costing the budget more. It's more of a grade change than it is a salary change. Have I muddled the waters on that, or do you know where I'm?
Well, I think so, but you're saying there's no salary difference between a grade 10 and a grade 11?
There is, but we will hire within we cannot hire at step one because we will basically have no library director. Or the library director we can hire at that level, which is around 57,000. No one will accept it. And we don't have a huge pool of applicants as it is.
So basically, your library director, your new director would be getting hired at where this past director was, which was grade 10 around step 6. When the new budget rolls around, they're gonna go up to grade 11, but they're probably gonna be starting at grade 11, step 1 or step 2, whatever is the commensurate salary to them.
Oh, I see what you mean.
So
Got it.
that way they're going up to the correct grade level, but it's not gonna be a jump because they were midway in number 10. All right.
And as you notice, that comes down to, with your calculations, it's over $3,000 a year.
That I took from what Connor provided. I did not do any math. So,
Probably.
And you have to keep in mind that the wages and benefits that are printed in your budget binder don't reflect the changes of the wage study that the select board implemented a couple of meetings ago. So you'll receive updated materials with the wages and benefits of the new pay plan. And that will reflect, wage increases of an average, it was an average of 8 or 9%.
Now, this is with our budget increase, raise increase that we had talked about. These figures reflect that.
The numbers in your hand do not. That was just, the 2 meetings ago, 2 select board
Yeah.
meetings ago. So all of the wage and benefit, the pages of the budget binder that look like we're in chapter 20.
Because what I'm getting at is if that wage increase is going to come,
This,
then I would be safe if I said to Madam Chair to reevaluate that going to step 11, grade 3, because the wage increase would already be there for step 10, grade 10, step 6, but that would get a 7 raise, and that would, with that percentage that we had talked about, going to 11 to 3, then it would go, that's a considerable amount when you turn around and add that.
you have to remember there isn't an incumbent in the library director position. So I think what the library trustee chair said is the budget number that's in there now, the library trustees are prepared to hire within the budget as presented.
I'm not arguing.
Okay.
The aspect, as I'm saying, is that after the budget is approved, or it's not approved, but I'm assuming that it's ever going to be for the town, be approved, then that means that all this extra movement that they have recommended going from step 10 to 11 makes it quite a handsome increase.
Can I just clarify, just for looking at the narrative? I didn't do arithmetic, I just accepted what Connor had done. But when I listed the current, the person Melissa was in, it was at grade 10, step 6. The hourly rate of that is $29.56. Grade 10, step 7 is more than $30.21. So 30.21 is step 3 on your new grade 11. If I did the math, I don't know if it would come out near the 60.
What's step 1, grade 11, step 1?
I do not know offhand, but what I'm trying to tell you is, we haven't negotiated anything with any of our candidates. But we are budgeting at the level as if Melissa had not left, so we now have a budget increase. It doesn't necessarily mean we're gonna hire this person at grade 10, step 6, we haven't got into that negotiation yet. So
But then if you don't use it, then you have the option to use that money elsewhere. Correct. I am not arguing that point, that's the legal way to do it.
We could do
You
it.
have no argument there, but I'm just saying that, overall, you're at 14.84%. I think that's an awful lot high increase.
What you're talking about just on the salary and wages.
Yeah, the whole.
Well, remember, as I said-
Thing just a minute.
Okay, well, as I said, first of all, I want to remind you that this is a relatively small budget. So when you're talking only the personnel side, a small change is significant to us, and it's a significant percentage. With respect to the library director's position, even that $3,000 is calculated is like 5%, which is your 2.5% step and a 2.5% COLA. It sort of, falls into that range. So, to not have whatever the percentage that you calculated would mean that we cannot move Amy's position to full-time. Amy has an MLS. It is absolutely critical that we have her level of experience and expertise and use that accordingly. And I think you'll see that when I go through other lines, the kind of analysis that goes in to really make sure that we're buying the right materials, that we're reading the right materials, that we're making other decisions appropriate by looking at utilization as well as the array of materials that people want, requires a certain level of expertise.
I can speak to some staffing.
Okay.
No, excuse me. But when we have designated a certain percentage to come up for the pay raise, and hopefully the voters will give it to us.
Mhm.
That puts us in a different category altogether. We realize that we have a lot of individuals that are underpaid right now. So we had the study made so we can make the corrections. We've also said this is what we would like to have the voters approve as a pay raise. And just saying what you're asking for is higher than we're given to the other employees of the town. I realize that the library has their employees and the town has theirs. And I'm just trying to not have any friction from our other groups when it comes to the amount of percentage of what the library employees are receiving. And that's all I have to say. I don't fault you. I agree. We've talked about it when I've been allowed to speak. Just for everybody's information, I attend numerous, but not all of them, the meetings for the library. And sometimes I say things, sometimes I don't. So that's how it is. And what I say is just off the cuff. But when we have these meetings, I understand it. But I just have to make sure it's a fair, equitable for everybody. You know, I hope you do, Madam Chair. I really do.
I understand that. And the reason I think our percentage is high this year on this area is because of taking a part-time position and making it full-time, even though we've covered some of that by taking it full-time and making it part-time, and the benefits that go along with those. It really has nothing to do with the library director position, because that doesn't really contribute.
I'm gonna stick with it just so I'm just talking about the overall, because,
Right.
you know, you know, when I talked to you privately, I told you I would turn around and agree with the high percentage, but I'm only one of five, so I can't agree to say what I want to say here. But what I'm saying to you is that we have the taxpayers to look out for. Is there any way at all, you can take that 14.84% increase and make a change to it, or cut it back at least to 10? Is there any way you could do something?
We could.
No, I'm just asking you.
I guess the answer I'm gonna say is no. If we're going to be able to have the library function appropriately, and I know Amy would maybe like to.
I mean, we literally, Wendy and myself, we've been at the library, both of us, for over 20 years. We looked at this budget once Melissa had moved on. I mean, we did go through, and anything that we could cut, we looked at what was being used, what wasn't being used. We looked at databases that we could cut, and we are doing some of that. So there were areas that we pulled back on. I think you're seeing this in your wages line for a couple of different reasons. To be perfectly honest, library workers have been excruciatingly unpaid, lower paid in this town. So we are starting to really feel that in this economy. Everything has changed in the past few years. We used to be able to get away with paying somebody lowball wages at the library. We can't get people to apply for the jobs. We're putting job descriptions out there, and it's crickets, because you can go to McDonald's and get paid more than sitting at our desk, even though the person at the desk needs to know how to answer a reference question when somebody comes in and says, I was just diagnosed with cancer. Could you please help me? I need help with my taxes. Can you help me find where I need to go? These aren't jobs that take no skill, yet we are paying them $13 an hour. So these wages are more than fair for what people are doing. We have a director's position that's open, that when they find out what the salary is, half of them turn around and walk, because it's not a reasonable wage in today's economy. So yeah, we have to make some corrections. We have to make some corrections if you're actually going to have a well-staffed library with people that know what they're doing. That's the long and short of it.
But overall, the reason I asked about the total percentage, is there any way that you could give them some, but not all of it at once to make it excellent? Because, you know, we have a lot of taxpayers in town. Also, if you're bringing up McDonald's, I'm going to bring up police department, I'm gonna bring up our fire department and our DPW. They have turned around and not ordered some of the equipment they needed. They have turned around and not ordered or requested additional personnel because they're trying to work with us. And I'm not saying you're not working with us. I'm just asking you, Madam Chair, to consider doing it, and you've answered me no. And I want to thank you, I want to thank you very much for where you're at, and I know where I'm going, so I'm going to stop because that's all I have to say. But I really appreciate all the time and effort you and your staff have put together to bring this budget forward. I want to thank you for that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I've really been emphasizing, and we've both been talking about the salary part, because it's the biggest part of the budget, and it's where we're asking for a big change. I would like to just take you very briefly through some of these other items that have a significant increase. Under contracts, I mentioned outsourcing the computer network support. And I've noted that the cost of that service is $5,460. You'll notice in the difference, it is not $5,460. This is where we looked at contracts for things like what we call databases that patrons use. We added a number of those during COVID so that people could get more services remotely. They range from things like a service called Pronunciator, which is a language learning program, and Universal Class, which is classes people could take remotely, but not have to pay a penny for them through the library. What we have done this past year is we have tracked every month how many people have accessed or used those databases during the month, and then looked at the year. We determined that about 3 or 4 of them we don't feel are getting adequate use to justify continuing. So we have pulled those out of the budget. And that's how we basically, so I kind of wanted to get credit, George, for a big thing. We have looked at this budget and we have lowered things, even services that patrons use, in that analytical way. What is worth continuing? What do we not have justification for? And made those changes. And those are changes we made since Susan Frankel and Amy and Wendy and I have scrutinized the budget. The building maintenance, that number, which we are hoping to have a smaller increase, is essentially a transfer of an activity, a responsibility from the public safety highway department, not public safety, public works.
Highway department.
The highway department over to the library. There was, they basically concluded they don't have the equipment to appropriately clean the walkway from the parking lot to the library front doors. We have hunted, I shouldn't say we, I should give credit where it's due. Wendy and Amy have called every landscaper and, you know, basically the only, we had one company that would agree to do it for a cost, a contracted for the season cost of $23.95. That's the only change in that line. They have since been beating the bushes to find a less expensive alternative, and we feel we found someone that would be a less expensive. It's not still going to be cheap. And this is the first year we will have assumed this financial responsibility. So we hope to lower that to maybe 2,000 instead of 23.95, and maybe it'll get lower, but it's a per storm kind of fee. We don't know yet what the winter's going to look like and how it's going to work out. So equipment maintenance, some of the equipment maintenance is covered by the computer outsourcing, so that's actually a decrease. The copier lease and maintenance, that is entirely related to the overage costs. We're in the 5th year of a 5-year lease for the copier. Our copier is available to the public to use for copying, and color copies became very popular, and we have run way over our budget on that. So we increased that to partially cover that, and we've increased effective November 1st of this year, the copying rates for people who use the copier, black and white and color copies, to be higher, so that and if it goes over 2,600, we will cover those, any expense through the fees that we charge the public for making copies.
For color copies as well, we've started to do a lot of our own in-house PR. So instead of going out and having somebody print some reading booklets for us and those sort of things, which was very expensive, we've taken some of that on in-house. So we use our copier to do that. So that's why that's gone up a little bit.
Conferences and training is pretty self-explanatory. We, among the other conferences we send folks to, we send people to the New England Library Association Conference. This year it was in Manchester, New Hampshire, so there was no overnight, very little travel. Next year it's on the Cape. So we just added essentially equivalent to cover that cost. And the other one that I think is interesting is under dues and fees. One of the groups that we belong to is a library purchasing cooperative. It's called SILK. And that costs $300 a year to belong to that. It's a pooling of resources of how many libraries?
13.
13 libraries. And it's used to purchase DVDs and audiobooks on CD. And I'm gonna let Amy talk about this. This is her baby.
So we've belonged to Silk for a little over 20 years. And when we first started, our collections in both of these areas were pretty small, like most libraries. Media was just kind of starting to become a staple part of libraries. So it made sense for us to pool our money, and then we had this rotating collection that every 3 months we'd get something new. You know, we had people waiting for those because we had a tiny collection in both of those areas. Since then, you know, we've been able to build up our collection over the years. So we have a pretty good collection in those areas at this point, and we've also budgeted so we can purchase in those areas for people. So at this point, I kind of took a look at that. We've actually been doing a lot of the work for Silks. So I've been doing purchasing for Silk, and we've been doing some of the processing for it. So when I looked at not only how much we pay, the $300 per year, the amount of work that it takes to be a part of the co-op and the amount of staff time that it takes for us to help process those materials, and then to every 3 months, process them into our collection and then process them out of our collection and then do the new bag. When you start looking at the amount of staff time that takes, that $300 starts looking more like $1,200 to $1,500 a year when you start putting staff time in there. And at this point, I looked at that and I said, for the circulation that they're getting, I just don't think that is worth our time anymore. I think we can provide what the citizens of Barrington need in those areas, either by purchasing or through interlibrary loan at this point.
So it's really a great move to take something that you've been in for 20 years and an assumption that, of course, you just continue that indefinitely. But I think it's, to me, a testament of really approaching these decisions very professionally, analyzing utilization and cost benefit analysis, basically. And it's only $300, but it's another step. So I've mentioned that in part so that you'll know that we have and continue to scrutinize every line item in this budget to see, are there places that we can trim back? And, you know, in a time of high inflation, I actually think we did pretty well in doing the best we could on that. Happy to answer other questions.
I have a question actually for Connor. So Connor, can you describe to us, I don't know if you know the criteria that the company we hired to look at the wage compensation, that they would give the recreation department manager a grade 11 and then another head of another department a grade 10?
It's a good question. And so had some of these conversations. One of the problems we had in the compensation study we did a few years ago was we selected 8 communities to be comparable communities. And the trouble is the metrics that you use for comparable community vary dramatically by department. And 2 of the departments it varied dramatically for were recreation and library. So there are communities, and a lot of the 8 communities from the last compensation study, Barrington was comparable by things like the size of our budget, the number of our residents, things like that. But the communities had vastly different recreation departments because they're served by outside agencies or the schools. And so we actually had one of the biggest recreation departments there. Libraries, there isn't a apples to apples comparison. If your community's 9,300 residents, then your library looks like this. There's really a large spectrum. So what the 2022 wage study, what the consultant recommended was casting a much wider net to make sure we captured communities that had provided comparable services. And so we reached out to all the departments, specifically public safety, police and fire, especially fire, structured differently in different communities, recreation, library, what communities have comparable services or structure as you all. And so the consultant used essentially the subset of the comparable communities that kind of match the types of services that we offer in order to determine what the market was paying for those positions. And so the overall results from all 15 communities reflected that the recreation director and the library director were both underpaid at 15%. About 15%. And so I guess what the consultant had identified was that the communities with comparable library services and the communities with comparable recreation services skewed kind of opposite directions, not really far, but that you supported their recommendation to place the library director on grade 11 or grade 10 and the recreation director on grade 11.
So it's, I think from my perspective, but I'm listening to, it's not the most solid data. Because I have a sense that libraries are sort of undervalued in a lot of the comparable communities, so that kind of keeps the salaries lower.
Right, and Ms. Gaudiel and I talked about that, if there's the comparable communities, it was just that comparable communities. During the last compensation study, we tried to compare some positions to similar private sector counterparts, but it's not easy to do that. A lot of what we do, especially in the library, is unique to the public sector. And so if every library in the state is deemed underpaid by the labor market, and that's what you're comparing to, then your data is inherently jaded by those metrics. I think at the end of the day, the wage study provides an analysis of available market data for comparable communities. We targeted the 60th percentile in order to say, hey, the average, we want to be above the average so the data lasts a little bit longer, implementation lasts very long, but it's not going to be a perfect reflection of every position in every department. And so that those were the results. And, I talked with the chair about how to reconcile that, whether to ask to have the position regraded or regrade it within the existing budget. And so the trustees that have opted to take the budget number that they have, higher within a certain range in the grade that it was recommended from the compensation or from the wage study, and then regrade the position in 2023, which in the library, the trustees have the authority they don't have to assign to our pay plan at all. It's good that we do because we do their payroll and our payroll system's set up by the grades and steps, but they have the authority to do that separate than other positions.
You're referencing the last compensation study, not the more recent.
I was referencing both. Yeah, so the compensation study was 3 years ago, which is the one that looked at some private sector data, only had 8 comparable communities. The most recent wage study was 15 comparable communities, no private sector component.
And I think one of the challenges whenever you do any wage survey kind of thing is it's always retrospective data. So you're probably looking at, the consultant is stuck looking at, let's say, 21 data. We're hiring in 22 in a high inflation market. It just makes our challenges even more so. If you have an incumbent and they're not moving and they're happy to stay with you, there's a little less pressure. The other position that we're struggling with is that technology, because the starting salary of that is in the $16 range. And we want somebody who can both manage the technology at the library and teach the public. We do local librarian, and then we help people out with that sort of thing. So we're still searching for that. And the ABC was very acknowledged the challenges we have there. The downside, and I think you were even mentioning this earlier, George, is when you make a shift with one position, like we could have said, let's upgrade that position. But then we have other underpaid people. And, you know, the private sector, you can move everybody around. In the public sector, we're very concerned about fairness within the library staff. So. Other comments or questions?
I think we do need to address the warrant articles.
Oh, yes.
Please,
The,
please.
we put in a request to make an addition to the warrant article. The request is for $75,000 addition to the capital reserve for the construction of a new library. There, what we are planning to do is, Catherine planning to do is to basically redesign and rework our library proposal. And bring forth a proposal for a new library facility for the 2024 ballot. Quite honestly, part of our thinking was, we knew that the public safety building was coming forward. We thought they were gonna likely be on the ballot for 23, and we didn't want to have voters again facing two bonds in one vote. At this point, we're still aiming for 2024. And if you saw us at the polls, you know that we're really reaching out to the community, polling people on where they want to see a library, what they want to see in the library, and basically starting fresh. There will be some cost to us in doing that, in that once we get all that input from the public, we'll be working with our architect again to redesign the building. And so there'll be that cost related to that. Since I met with the ABC, I've spoken with our architect, and those costs would probably run around $40,000 for architectural work and engineering work to bring forward a proposal. One of the reasons I think we would like to see, in addition to the capital reserve, obviously those funds help to defray future cost. It's also gives us an opportunity to, I hate to say test the waters, but sort of measure the town's willingness to go forward with a proposal, because this would actually, unlike a warrant article covered by surplus, it would be a warrant article where voters know that it would affect their tax rate. Probably hardly at all at $75,000, but still, it's the point that it's not just already paid for, which is the impression I think people have when that something's covered by fund surplus.
I think it also gives donors that are looking at possibly donating towards a new library, if that gets voted on in the affirmative, I think it makes people see that, yes, the town has a buy-in to this. And if they're thinking about donating, that might be the spur for them to actually say, yeah, I'm gonna get that little bit extra. Same thing with grant funders. We often find that when you're writing grants, they want matching funds. They want to see that there's already a buy-in from the town level. So hoping that if something like that is in place, that maybe we can apply for some grants.
There were grants that the foundation had pursued earlier, and the response they got from the funders was, we need to see public support of the initiative before they would consider funding a grant request.
So there's 45 sitting in the fund balance at this point. And that should cover that would cover the engineering business that you want done. So this addition, the $75,000 would basically replenish plus.
It's replenishment. You know, quite honestly, I don't think we're wedded to the number 75. But as I said, I think having something on there shows to the public that the momentum is moving forward. It also, again, as a warrant article that is funded by taxation, makes that statement.
Although we do have nearly $500,000 public commitment.
Yes, the foundation, the library doesn't have it, but ultimately it will be transferred when we get things approved. Yes.
Sure. How will you be doing a survey to get the public's input? Which organization or group will be conducting that?
That is a joint venture of the library trustees and the foundation. The library trustees have the lead, of course, the lead responsibility on the whole building process. The foundation is primarily focused on fundraising and I'm going to say community engagement and information input. So one of the foundation staff people who has expertise in this area developed a very brief survey that we unveiled at the polls. And we were not unhappy that there were long lines to get in because all those people trundled by our table. And we've had a very good response already. It's online as well as we have paper surveys. So we're going to be continuing that survey and it included, how people use the library, what's most important to them, where they would want to see a library located. And so we're opening that avenue of reconsideration. And we plan to do those surveys through the month of November and then analyze the data in December. And then come January, we will start doing community input sessions. And already I think we have 25 people who responded to the survey and said they would like to be part of a community input session. So, and then after we go through that process, then we'll start with the design process.
Can I ask a question about the performance metrics? So I was surprised that the digital use had not gone up, but is this because if we actually saw the numbers from the pandemic and the pre-pandemic, there would be a trend there that just 20 and 21 is the
Amy, feel that.
So, obviously during the pandemic, some of our digital numbers went really up because we weren't open. People couldn't
Yeah.
physically get their hands on the books. But I thought that number was very interesting too, because I think it shows one of the things that we often talk about. People say, why do you need a building? People can get everything digitally. People don't want everything digitally. We see this when we look at numbers like this.
I was so surprised
Yeah.
that your in-person visits had gone up.
Yes, absolutely. And I honestly think you're gonna see those in-person visits continue to go up. One of the things that I've seen over 20 years here is we do dips and troughs. And when the economy is not good, our circulation goes through the roof. Everybody's talking about recession. Everybody's talking about how expensive it is for things. Our numbers are gonna continue to go up. That's what I see. And I think it is the physical numbers. I think people are often surprised that the vast majority of people that we work with, even people who use digital, usually also walk out with a book in their hand. There is something visceral about having the actual book in hand. Same thing with audiobooks. We still have people who are audio CD users rather than digital. I think part of that is a learning curve. I think we still need, one of the reasons for our tech librarian is she or he is teaching people how to use those digital services. And we slowly get people to utilize those. But it's always surprising to me that even when they do use the digital side, they also still are using the physical as well.
I can tell, I was looking at some of the early responses on those surveys, and a number of people said what they wanted more of. They wanted more programs and for more age groups. And that's another reason that you have a facility. It's not just to house, books and materials. It's about the community and learning experiences, in-person learning experiences. And I think gradually as we're coming out of the pandemic, people really want to be with people.
We have definitely seen that. People, we've tried to do some virtual programming like we were doing during COVID, and it's crickets for our virtual programs. People are coming in and saying to us, we want to come here. We want to see other human beings. It's like we've had a couple of years where everybody was just so separated from each other. And I think people are getting back into that whole, they want to make those connections again. They want to go to story time. They want to meet parents that have children the same age. If they're retired, they want to come and do paint night and hang out with people and talk to people. For space use, I think one of the things to think about with the library is that it's not just housing your materials. It's used for everything from, families coming in. We have some families that do supervised visits. They come to the library and have their supervised visit. or someone in town who is being interviewed for a job. They'll come and ask us if there's a private.
You see that coffee shops in bigger places, but.
Yeah.
we don't
Right.
have those things.
And those are all the sorts of things that, I mean, sometimes we have to say no because we don't have a private space, or the one private space we have is currently in use. And those are the sorts of things we'd like to be able to offer more to people. Like when someone comes in and says, you know, I need to tutor a student, is there a small room that I could go into with them? I wish I could say yes to that, and I can't because we don't have it. So I think there are a lot of different ways that the library is utilized that people don't necessarily think of when they hear the word library.
Further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Since we've gone through all the requests today, and we have the notes from the budget committee meeting. Peter, do you want to add anything?
No, I think between our minutes and what the library has supplied since our meeting covers most of the issues that we had. So we're all set. Thank you.
All right. Sponsors. Yeah. Sorry, forgot for everything. Issuance of building permit on Brooks Road, Plastic Road. And 1211, lot 2.
Welcome.
Pretty good.
Good evening.
Please explain state name and address.
Yeah, my name is Steve Hyden with Civil Works Solution Company, working with Mr. Manning. Sean Manning owns the 175 Brooks Road, 20 acre parcel with the bus house on that. And it's part of the building permit application process. There's a class 6 road. He's got to go to the planning board and ask for their input as well as the select board. He's the first driveway that would be on the class 6 road, which was updated quite a while ago. And there are 5 or 6 other houses, a couple thousand feet down. So one of the items in here is about road maintenance agreement, and also I think the applicant must include the application proposal scope, which details how the road will be improved. There's no need to improve the road, as it actually is to that standard now. It's in actually pretty good shape. So as part of the building permit process, for John Hopkins to issue the building permit, you guys just need to actually grant that, allow him to do that. So there is a road maintenance, the group, he's part of that. He's committed to Jonathan as well. If he damages the road, building his house, which he's already got most of it done. He has not built the house, I'm sorry, the lot itself, but he would fix that. So
With that conversation there. The road agent suggested improvement. At least maintaining the road. So there's a lot of problems with the road. What are what the plans are regarding potholes and things of that sort that were mentioned by the road agent.
So there's, like I said, there's a whole number of people that live beyond where he is going to be, and they all would be combined to be able to upgrade that road, maintain the potholes. So he's committed to do that with the group.
But is there any word that they've done that or about to do that or going? To do that?
They haven't come up with a schedule to do that yet. But they'll work with the road agent. I know they would work with him just to fix the potholes. Again, if he does any of the work himself or damage, if he'd do that himself to his driveway. So.
Mr. Bailey.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you for you made your submit that you gave the PDS approvals and what have you. And one of the items that if they were to make the motion, I would ask of you is that on your shoreline impact. It's a question, it's not a statement or anything. It states under item 1 that the environmental services on the 27th used your map of the May 25th as the date to this permit has to be used by, and the map that you submitted is of a different date. Would you provide to our individual the proper map that coincides with this permit?
Yeah, so John Huckins has that map that goes with that. So there's actually two permits. One is the septic system design that was approved.
Yeah, I have that here, that's not the one I'm
Right.
concerned with right now.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about the setback from the water. I've spent time on conservation and what have you,
Yep.
and when it came up to the setbacks, that's why I'm asking that question here. And
So-
I just asked that if you do have it, you would provide it,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's my only objection I have to it.
Yeah, so just to be clear, the septic system design plan is exactly the same plan that was submitted to Shoreland. In terms of its
Let
setbacks.
me say this again to you. I'm not more concerned about the septic.
No, I understand what you're
I'm
asking.
talking about the setback for the house.
I understand.
Okay,
No, yeah, I just,
and I'm just looking to have the original map, the plot plan that you used to submit to get this here. Because this is not, this talks about a specific one, and the one you submitted is not the same because of the numbers. So I'm just
oh,
looking.
I see what you're saying. Yes, I got you.
All right, it's
Yeah, yeah.
it's a matter of numbers game, that's all it is.
No, I understand.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Did I handle that right? Thank you.
Done good.
Yeah, I want to make sure on this one.
The same English.
Yeah.
Done good.
Under category 3 for road improvement, it says the road should be finished with a minimum 4 inches of crushed gravel with properly established and maintained front. So doesn't look like it has 4 inches if it has a lot of potholes. I drove over there, there's a lot of potholes. So I'm wondering if that should be a requirement that he has to bring that up to that standard. Separate from when he joins the road association.
So that's essentially what the road agent recommended. So the road agent acknowledged that the road meets the width requirements, but because of the potholes, needs to be regraded with some material added at the discretion of whoever's grading it. And so the proposal you have with the staff comments in the town administrator report indicates that that would be a requirement. And that would be a requirement to be done prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. So for the town and the select board, whether that's done on the property owner, by the property owner, him or herself, or in conjunction with the road association is inconsequential, but the building inspector won't issue a certificate of occupancy until the conditions that this board makes are met. And if that includes being graded with material added, then the building inspector will check with the road agent. Does this meet the stipulation, that you recommended to the select board, yes or no? Not who did it, when was it done? Who was
Okay,
it
so
paid
our
for?
concern is not who is going to do it.
Yeah, but that's a little unfair because he's the last one in. He would have to, how far do you want him to upgrade the road?
His housing.
That's what I would think.
So it's to beyond the, I think it's 50 feet usually beyond the driveway. And it's not, necessarily upgrading the road, it's just bringing it up to maintenance. The road has been upgraded. But one of the problems and one of the reasons the select board and the town has a more robust class 6 and private road agreement is you can have the best road in the world, and that section of Brooks Road is pretty good, but if it's not maintained, then it falls into disrepair pretty quick. And so the policy as it's written with option 1 being that the road meets the width requirements, still has the, review by the police chief, the fire chief, and the road agent to look at things like how is the road maintained, and is there anything that there needs to be done to bring the road back to that standard, with a crown and the appropriate amount of crushed gravel.
The fire chief mentioned some brush removal too. Is that encroaching on the width, or what kind of brush removal?
There wasn't a specific recommendation from the fire chief for removing brush. I read that comment as well, talked to the fire chief, and the only stipulation recommended by the fire chief is to make sure that the street number is posted prior to construction.
I'm not actually finding it here in these class 6 and private road, but we have been asking other applicants to register the road association.
Yes, so that's a requirement in the policy, the future guarantee of future road maintenance.
Under what
I
number,
think
what
in
letter
his-
is that?
I think he.
Is that already done?
In his letter, he says that he will do that.
Well, I think he said he would join.
So we require a recorded at the registry a recorded agreement for guaranteeing future road maintenance. So there's two things. There's a release and indemnification, which is actually a statutory requirement. Sometimes these travel with the property. So one property owner will sign them, record them at the registry, and sometimes they're referenced in the deed. Sometimes the agreement transfers with the deed. And then the guarantee of future road maintenance. And so I don't know if it was recorded yet. The policy requires that it be recorded prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. Can you speak to that? The road maintenance at the registry, recorded at the registry?
I'm not sure if it's been recorded or not. You do have a number of houses out there that have been there for quite a while. I'm not sure how, if the other members of the road association, I don't know if we can get them to sign it and record it. So that'd be a problem.
So this, yeah, I understand that point. So the select board, there's a lot of class 6 and private roads throughout town that have varying levels of road associations that maintain them. And so the select board, through their policy, are exercising the right for somebody looking for a building permit to start establishing recorded road maintenance agreements for these roads. Now, best case scenario, we've seen this happen most of the time, the property owner is able to work with the road association to collectively record a road maintenance agreement that is for the whole road. Other times, the property owner hasn't been able to do that, and the property owner does it individually. We have examples at the building office of kind of how it's been done both ways, but that's a requirement of the policy.
I have a letter from Vanessa dated 11/2/022 in concerns with Mr. Manning's property. And the second paragraph, the road agent, and this is Vanessa writing a letter to this board. We all have it, like to read it in the record. The road agent has stated, as long as the house will be built on the developed portion of Brooks Road, the road meets the town standards. The road currently has a few potholes and is quite rough, just needs grading. However, the next thing says homeowner should join, didn't say however, that was my mistake. There goes homeowners should join the road association if they haven't already. Homeowner should also repair all road damage incurred as a result of the project. So, you really don't need a waiver on that aspect of what you're asking. That's my opinion, and that's how I would vote to have that taken care of. Because all you're gonna do is road grade it, and then we're talking about afterwards, you're gonna do a new foundation, the weight of the truck and everything else, so.
Yeah, I think,
The homeowner's committed himself to
Yeah.
repairing it. damage to the
Yeah,
road.
he has.
no question.
There is one of these, somewhere in that mess papers, he's done that, I read that. But the
Yeah.
question is, we're talking about bringing it up to, the road agent said that yes, it meets the size things, but it's in very bad repair. So does that become a requirement that we make either through the road association, which would be the ideal, because hopefully they improve the whole road, which would make fire chief happier.
That's not Mr. Manning's concern, because he only has to go 50 foot
That-
past the edge of his
I
driveway.
appreciate
I know,
that,
I know you know
but
that.
that's a start.
Yeah.
And that's my point.
Yeah.
Is that it would be ideal if the whole road association did all roads, but please, each should do this part of it.
Yes.
It sounds like it part's already in an understanding because the inspector's not going to grant the occupancy. It's not done anyway, so.
Well, that's to be determined. So the select board, if the select board is interested in authorizing the issuance of a building permit, the two requirements recommended by staff, one being the grading with added material and the house number, are proposed as conditions of an issuance of certificate of occupancy. So yes, that would be how that would handle. We don't have authority to direct or require the road association to do anything. And, we have an application, the select board has authority with 674-41 to institute requirements in order to issue the permit.
Okay. Do we make that big?
The public hearing, so public comment first. Okay.
Check to see if they're wrong.
Right, and I tried to repeat all that verbiage back to you right at the
There.
beginning. I agree with it.
Okay, any other public comment? Again, if you're not here and commenting. Mr. Walker?
For the record, I agree with the road agent that the road needs to be graded and done repairs up to 50 feet past the edge of the driveway. That's something the board has done on a regular basis up to this point, and it's something that needs to continue. I just chose not to add them comments to it because it becomes kind of redundant when the road agent says it. I follow up on behind it, but this is what the board's done in the past, and I don't see any reason why that he's gonna create a problem for that road by doing the construction and stuff that the people that already live on the road shouldn't have to take care of. When the board of selectmen in the past have made the property and has maintained the road, so I believe that we should do that again.
Thank you. Any other comments from those present? Seeing none, if anyone is on Teams, if you'll raise your hand and recognize and will comment. If you're on the telephone, you'll press *6. Wait for recognition, make sure to unmute and comment.
I'm not seeing anything, Mr. Chair.
Right. Then if there's no further public comment. What do we think?
So in plain language, I would say that we will require the landowner to deal with the potholes, so to grade and add materials to that road. To join the homeowners association, and he has to record that agreement with his agreement with the homeowners association.
The road maintenance agreement,
Road maintenance.
consistent with the policy, and that's a requirement anyways. You don't have to indicate that in a motion. And on the town administrator report, the make a motion to authorize issuance of a building permit for map 211 lot 2 as proposed would include the 2 notes from the road agent fire chief regarding grading with added material and the house number. So if the select board is interested in making. Was that your motion?
That's my motion.
And that was your second?
Mr. Bailey, second.
Happy yellow line.
Bailey, aye.
Mancheck, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Yep, thank you. All right. Moving right along. Consent agenda. Comment? You happy with this?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, very good, thank you. Appointments, I think we have appointments this point. Administrator's report.
Awesome, thank you. So we are at our second meeting in November. I won't read through the list, but I've included again the November work anniversaries, of which we have quite a few. Next topic, I wanted to give you a quick update on Ask the Town. You'll remember from the last meeting, this is something that we announced with the tax bill insert, which tax bills will be mailed soon. We've started softly promoting the idea again in an effort to bridge the gap between the information we make available on the town's website and activities going on as the town continues to grow and what the town government does, continues the programs offered by recreation and things like that expand. So we've had quite a bit of interest so far. I included just a brief sampling of some of the questions that we received. There was a question about political signs, a couple questions about the transfer station, the pay-as-you-throw system, and the fact that a lot of people double bag their trash, which makes more plastic waste, which is something that we're trying to reduce. And so a thoughtful conversation about that. And then a question about road paving. And so again, that's just a sampling. What we have decided to do is take these questions and questions that aren't too specific in nature. We'll create a frequently asked question and add it to the website. And so you'll see that in my town administrator report, each one of those has an answer, which is a link. So that's a link to the question, the frequently asked question that includes the answer and often cites other town materials on the town website.
I asked, put dates on all of them too, that was pretty handy.
Oh, great. Was there not a date on one? You meant to- I'll check.
Of these four, they all have dates on them.
Oh, great.
But they're older materials on that same website, but I
Pre-existing.
think as we go through this, it would be good to have dates.
Also, some of the pages.
Well, they're all kind of-
That's.
No,
Unless it's-
on separate documents. You get ready to go and you have to turn around and you look at the printer and you go through and you go, okay, this is good.
It's a
So,
great service.
yeah, so I would encourage you, and I made this last pitch, this pitch at the last select board meeting. Obviously, those touched by town government in some way that volunteer, they're on a select board, they're appointed somewhere. People will approach you and ask you questions about anything. That's just the nature of the beast. It happens with staff as well. And a lot of times we don't always have the answer. Wouldn't expect everybody to know everything that goes on in town. But this is a great way that you can give somebody a substantive approach, give them the opportunity to do something and hear back in pretty short order. I think we've been able to reply to everybody within a day. And so that's a pitch by Ask the Town. Other questions or thoughts about that?
It's great.
Good
Okay.
answers.
Great. And again, most of this is information that's already available. It's just a matter of getting it to residents. And that was really one of the goals that, we need to know what residents are interested in and want to know about so that we can best provide the most topical information to them. So
when the tax bills go up, they'll have this.
yeah, so there's a plug for it. So we're including a tax bill insert that I think the select board received a copy of in last week's packet of that.
I will tell you, and you know, because I had to have you help me, is that when we had the voting, there was a lot of questions that people were asking. I mean, some of them were redundant, but I think that this is going to help us an awful lot to get things done.
Absolutely. So also a quick plug for the master plan survey. So the master plan, we're updating 2 chapters this year, the transportation chapter and the land use chapter. These are both really important chapters of the master plan. The select board through the planning board and Stratford Regional Planning have a steering committee with a variety of members appointed by the planning board, including Ms. Capiello. And they put a lot of work into trying to best derive from residents what was important to them so that the updates to these chapters accurately reflect the current snapshot of resident interest. So encourage anybody in all the circles that you run in, encourage them to participate in this survey so they can contribute to what the future Barrington looks like.
Do you have a date for when the tax bills are going to go out? My concern is the information about the survey will arrive after the survey is closed. And I don't know if we can extend the closure date.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll get with the town planner about that. I forget where we arrived at, what level of information to include in the tax bill insert for that reason. I guess you posted out last week. I think we also included information about the citizen information session in December. But yes, I'll provide that feedback to the planner.
Okay, will you be, anything from Tiffany?
Nothing to pass on. No, thank you. Just the signing of that Class 6 private road agreement.
Good. All business. We need to start on this thing, but it sure would be nice to have the stuff from the planning board, but my thoughts, but anyway, any other thoughts about Fifth District?
Yes, after discussion with you and several other members separately, not together, so we didn't call it a meeting. I turned around and I went back and I reread this and I had some highlighted areas and I enlightened myself more, I should say. So I think it's a good idea for us to look at this and to move forward. That's my recommendation to everybody. I think it's going to be worthwhile for us to do that. Because there was a lot of questions I also had for different rec areas and what have you for during voting. You know, people thought, I don't know if anybody else experienced it while you were there, but I did it. So that's my recommendations that we look forward to in moving forward with this.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that we all kind of agree this is a good idea. I think what we need to start doing, because we want to focus and we need to get this out, and have input from the whole community, is what is the district we're talking about? And what do we want included in that district? There have been suggestions, me, for example, of other places where there might be tips, like Swain Lake was one. Someone brought that up. That's just a suggestion. But we need to, as a select board, need to kind of define where and what we want in this TIF. Pretty specifically, not that it's been flexible, but I think we need to be pretty sure before we have to get this out. People have to have their input. They have to listen to get it out to the community so that they can think about it and ask us questions or answer questions or have input.
I think we should try to stay on the line of family oriented. We really should. You know, I think that should be the first thing that we move forward to.
Okay.
The things that could help a family use, I said, because, you know, nowadays, you take your family somewhere, it really costs, and this here would help make it easier.
Where would we like the families to go?
Well, one would be the town center and village center, because that would incorporate this new civic space that we may see as part of a conservation easement. But it also seems like on Romsdale Lane, because we've got the recreation department there, and we've got a park, and then that field behind it. So that could be an area.
You know, look what the library said. They might be looking at a different location. I don't know what the chairperson was trying to say, but there's another area that could be used up there like that. It's just the way that the DPW turned around and built up that road. So it's, I mean, the playgrounds area, so it's all smooth. I don't know if any of you have seen that. That's a beautiful piece of work. That's another place in it. And if they're serious on not wanting the library, we would have another area that could be fenced off to keep the balls and stuff from the traffic and make it safe. That we could start there, or don't know. Well, we got the pond. We got that, all that area around the pond and what have you that we could upgrade.
Are you talking about the pond by Caleb's?
Yes, in that area there, because that's
The Christmas, behind Christmas Bell.
yeah,
Right,
right there.
well,
That-
we use
that-
town
that-
center, village.
One of the concerns I would have about Ramsdale Lane is that in order to make this work, we have to have an increase in taxes. And
That's not enough.
I mean, it's a good deal, but I'm not sure that we're going to get much bang for any buck that we have there because it's all town. It's very little taxable. Or there may be no taxable land. On the other hand, the area behind Christmas Dove and behind Calyx, that whole pond, which is part of the zoning of the village center, might certainly lend itself to it if and have good funds out of that.
Right, well, and that's where commercial development would be. In that area.
Exactly.
That's where the tax.
Exactly.
So a couple things, you hit on an important point about the geography of a district, which a district can be pretty big. So a district could be drawn to include the land of the town center and include land out to Ramsdale Lane, including the town-owned land at Ramsdale Lane. One of the piece of town-owned properties out there, which has development potential, is the lot that's in the back of Redemption Road, which is by Turbo Camp. So the recreation department doesn't have any interest in that lot now, but that was kind of reserved for future recreational development. So the district can could extend that far if we wanted to. But the point that you made, which is an excellent one, is that at a minimum, it should include a majority of developable property that there's tax value to capture. And so we have the timing is good because we have projects that the tax value hasn't been realized yet, but are at various stages of approval. So it's easy to draw a map that include those, like the units across from the middle school, like behind Christmas Dove. We could even include the subdivision up here. Absolutely. And one of the reasons this would be important is because what I've heard is that having some opportunity for recreation along the old railroad bed that connects Route 9 with Scruton Pond Road could be valuable. It's privately owned right now, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it always has to be that way. And so including that in the general area might be a good idea. And Mr. Chair, to your point, go ahead, please.
One question about that. If we run into our 5% problem here.
Right. So like I said, I have drawn maps that include both property at Ramsdale and all of the development projects that we know about and stay within the requirements of the statute for the size, because the district can only be a certain size.
So there are two small developments on Route 9 that would be between Ramsdale and the center of town, the 3 acre or 3 lot off of Route 9, and then it's with living in commercial space that hasn't been approved yet. It's been over those.
Yeah. Well, I just thought we're pushing up on the limits of how much. I mean, it's a finite amount of land that we can use for this.
Well, we have a lot of land, so.
Well, that's true. We
One
do.
thing in our favor.
Right. And it's percentage. So, 50 square miles, we have a lot. But to your point earlier, Mr. Chair, about it'd be nice to have the planning board's comments. So my goal is at the November 28th meeting to present to the select board the feedback from a variety of stakeholders. Recreation, the planning board, I have a meeting set up with business owners, undeveloped property business owners in the town center area to start talking about from all of the different groups what they'd like to see as part of the development program for a TIP. And so at the November 28th meeting, the intention would be for the select board to review all of that. And hopefully there are a lot of duplicates, the different stakeholder groups all identifying certain aspects of development from the municipality, from the civic space or civic use or open space, in order for the select board to determine what is actually going to be on the development program. So, I hope that the select board at this meeting would brainstorm what are the items that are important to the select board from residents that you've talked to. And so at a high level, the reason this conversation came about is because the zoning district for the town center was set up to say that anywhere from 15 to 25% of the developed land is going to be committed to civic use or open space, with no plan to do anything or fund anything on that property. And we have a lot of undeveloped, conservation property in Barrington, but I think the intention of that 15 to 25% civic use or open space is to do something with it. Parks, pavilions, the pond. And so the idea of a TIF district allows the burden not to be shared across the entire tax base, but take and reinvest the tax dollars that are developed within the area. So it doesn't change anybody's tax rate. It just directs those dollars to fund the project. So for the select board, what are those items in the town center that the select board wants to see? I included a couple examples in the parks category, playgrounds, field space, courts or trails, gazebos, pavilions, parking, sidewalks, or evaluation of supporting infrastructure. The budget committee has also, begun the conversation. And one of the topics that they brought up is if we want to see continued development and redevelopment in the town center, all of these properties are limited by the requirement to have their own well and their own septic. And we saw some commercial properties on the other side of the street that now share a well for that, requirement. But if the planning for the long-term future of Barrington is to continue to see this property be redeveloped where value is added, that's a huge constraint. And the municipality might not have a role in that other than coordinating, but coordinating costs money. And some of that money could be reinvested in that direction.
I think that we should also invite the rec for any suggestions they might have. I think that would benefit,
Yeah, I
be
think they're a
beneficial to all of them.
They have been invited. They're actively working on a list from their
Okay,
strategic
okay,
plan.
I didn't hear that
Mhm.
before, okay.
I think. Consider library. Put in that space. I think we ought to get some input from the library.
In what way, sir?
The library in the town center. Place for the town, one incredible place for the library. In the town center.
Yeah, I
think this,
wondered if,
No, just
when I saw their survey.
Things to think of.
Yeah.
That's my personal.
put a pitch in for the cemetery too. I think there's a lot of potential in the cemetery area in improving the cemetery's aesthetic and landscape. There's a lot.
We also have the big conservation area too, behind the parking lot for the middle school. That goes from there out to,
They're looking.
the trail camp. That's a nice piece in there.
Mhm. So to the point about the library, I don't think as we've talked about the TIF district so far, we've talked about spending money as it comes in, not using the authority to bond, which is most typically why communities use the TIF financing option. But there's a risk in that, and there's little to no risk in just waiting until you have the cash on hand and then spending it for the priorities. That said, I don't think the money that is likely to come in from a TIF district, even including the development that we've talked about tonight, would be enough to fund the building of a library. But maybe something that could be included in the development program is allowing those funds to be used for the evaluation of municipal facilities, so that engineering and design costs, the feasibility, the town hall had previously spent, I think, $50,000 on the property adjacent to Christmas Dove in the back, evaluating that as a site for the town hall. This was a decade or more ago. But that costs money. And so if the TIF funds were able to be used in such a way like that, where you're not asking voters, across the town to support this, you're taking the added tax value and reinvesting it in an area that the commercial tax base in that area would benefit from a library being there. And so as a development program item, I would say, design and engineering of municipal
But
facilities.
that piece of property you're talking about was turned down by the select board because of its connection to the water, to the wetlands. Because it was just too close, and there wasn't enough room to put the building and the parking the way it's all set up. And the way it's been subdivided now, there's a 5-year piece on that proposal for that piece of property right now, because they came in and got a 2-year extension. So it would go to 5, so that area has too much wetlands for, that was the reason why we didn't go there before. I mean, we need to find, for the library, you need to find something that's, we got across the street, we got, how many acres do we have across the street that we could use? Because we can vote to use that conservation land across the street. We could put a library over there in the back. There's a road, we have 125, we have the other, there's just a lot of things we can look at if that's what the library wants, because, I had mixed signals tonight as to when that came up, and I'm going.
So I think let's put our head back in the clouds. I don't
Yeah.
think we need to solve tonight where future library is going to go. But what I heard is that the select board is interested in allowing funds to be used for the evaluation of municipal facilities. I heard using funds for the library, which is, geographically co-located. It would be, easy to include that in the scope of a TIF district. I heard Ramsdale Lane, which again is easy to include. We pick up the cemetery along the way. We pick up the lot off Redemption on the way, and include that area. So we have, development potential. Other things like supporting infrastructure. So, we talked about recreation opportunities, which I expect we'll hear a lot from. I talked about the police and fire chief, who talked about, as more energy and attention is in this area. Things like blue light phone booths or lighted parking, lighted paved parking or more parking or sidewalks or some sort of crosswalk infrastructure. And again, all of these things are going to cost money. Some we might be able to work with the state in their 10-year plan to get projects funded. But what does the select board envision if we were to go down this road and have money available for other supporting infrastructure in that part of town?
At some point, we might be talking municipal water and sewage.
And that's what the budget committee talked about.
And lighting. Lighting would be a big- Whatever we put back there.
But that's infrastructure. Those are various structures.
It's too bad the master survey questions got developed before this
Yeah.
proposal came. We could have targeted a question.
Mhm.
You know, it's-
That's just the timing.
We can always add a sheet to it. You know,
But some of those remote results might
I think
guide
they
decision
need
making.
more, some of this discussion.
That's what I'm saying. It'd be nice to have that.
Public restrooms for the town center. I mean, you know, when you have like the stroll and all these things, I mean, not everybody can't use Kalos.
Mhm.
The porta potties. Wonderful.
Yeah, or, you know, an in between, something that's a municipal facility that has programming space, has space to set up as a snack shack. Maybe they have bathrooms or a more professional array of porta potties, you know, that can be brought in for larger events,
Bigger events.
place to have bigger events. Okay. So other things that the select board want to get on the record before we kind of aggregate everything at the next meeting.
you know, you know, I like to say this is that there's a lot of items that, like up where I live, there's a lot of people that use churches basketball court constantly there. They drive in. Sometimes they turn the lights on, the cars or the trucks, whatever they're driving. I mean, we can start simple with little areas like that, and then we can also turn around, you know, we might even progress to deck off view, which would be a new thing for the area. So you really don't know.
I want to go back to the comment about Swains Lake, and I don't know if that was maybe because people were thinking about the potential of a town beach, but that comes up from the public often. And so there's only certain bodies of water where we could do that, possibly Ayers Lake, possibly Swains.
Mhm.
And that's about it. But we could think about how a tip could incorporate some of that.
I suspect it was probably the same person that caught the chair that caught me with the idea about Swains Lake. It's a good one. The idea being there are challenges that face the residents that live around Swains Lake that everybody else doesn't experience. Milfoil in the lake, the dam and the infrastructure of the dam, to some extent, the supporting infrastructure, the causeways and culverts along the Swains Lake there. Now, there isn't a lot of undeveloped land around Swains Lake, but people are constantly upgrading seasonal cabins to, you know, full year-round homes or making other improvements to the lakefront property. And as those values continue to rise, a TIF district could capture the added value and make that money available for, if the select board wanted to, you know, set money or have money available for milfoil remediation or making improvements to the dam. And again, this idea of financing doesn't increase the taxes for the residents of Swains Lake. It simply uses added tax value from a geographic district and makes that available for a specific purpose. And so I'm not familiar of a TIF district in New Hampshire where it's been used for that kind of scope, that, you know, specific. Usually it's in revitalization of economic centers of some sort, but I suspect it would very much be possible. My recommendation on that train of thought is, let's start with one. Let's take baby steps. Let's see if this is something that the community is interested in and is interested in supporting. And if we're successful and the program's successful, let's look at how we have other opportunities. Good example would be the property down by Liberty Truck. The town owns 130 acres of undeveloped property that we'd like to see developed eventually. Swains Lake be an example, or Ayers Lake, an opportunity to try to have money available for a beach. We're not going to capture millions of dollars this way, but we can have money to fund, those stages of a project that are sometimes difficult to come up with money for mid-budget cycle. So one thing that I wanted to read to you really quick is how the warrant article will read. And I think this is really important because it underscores the work that we all have to do in explaining to voters what this all means in order to garner support. Because if residents are confused, they're going to vote no, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. And so the warrant article is pretty basic because it's supported in the background by this development program and finance plan. So to see if the town will vote to establish the town center tax increment financing district in accordance with RSA 162-K. A description of the area. So however we draw the area, is described in words. And further, to see if the town will adopt the development program, which is what we spent time talking about tonight. And I hope to finalize at the next select board meeting. What are we actually going to do with the money for the proposed town center TIF district in accordance with RSA 162K:6 and the financing plan for the town center TIF district in accordance with RSA 162-K:9. Our financing plan, as we've discussed it, is simple. Because we're not bonding, the financing plan says when money's available, we'll spend it on the development program. So that part, if we are all still in agreement that that's how we would fund the items, that part's pretty easy. And then copies of the map and the development program and the financing plan are available to town hall. Majority vote required. And so that's what residents will read in the ballot box with the curtain closed to come up with a determination of, are we going to support this or not? Now, certainly we'll work with the attorney to include as much description as we can, but there's limits in state law on how much we can describe in a warrant article within the language. Again, the reason that's important is because if we think this is a good idea and we want voters to support it, we're going to need to explain it to voters. We're going to need to decide what it is and describe it to voters as best we can. That's also one of the reasons that the grassroots effort is so important. Getting with recreation, the various departments, business owners in the area, the planning board, all sorts of stakeholders that if they are interested and think it's a good idea, we'll continue that grassroots effort of getting the word out and making sure residents understand what they're deciding on. At the end of the day, if they understand what they're deciding on, they decide no, that's okay. But if they don't know what they're deciding on and vote no because of that, we failed.
Didn't they already vote to approve the concept of, right? And
Yes.
so maybe reminding them somehow that they've already voted to approve this,
Mhm.
just us following up with a more specific definition for you to consider.
No, it's actually, we're going to say, now we're going to do it.
Mhm.
Right,
And this is what it means.
but I think reminding them that the populace already voted in concept for it to support it.
Good point.
24 years ago.
Yeah. I was gonna say 93,
Right.
some such year as that.
And I looked for records to see what the plan was when it was originally adopted in 98, and I couldn't find anything. Most frequently in New Hampshire, that statute is adopted concurrently with a plan to establish a TIF district. And
So isn't it interesting?
yeah, that it was just, yeah.
Was there anything in the minutes from the meeting?
No.
Minutes?
No, and it was,
The town, I saw that online,
Town
there wasn't
meeting, yeah.
much.
right, yeah, I provided a link. So, I mean, that's easy to promote with everything else, yeah.
They discussed it at the deliberative session.
They did, but the minutes were very light. That's what Ms. Capiello was referencing.
Wasn't it?
And the voters in the room were pretty light too. I mean, it was 100 and,
That group.
well, no, traditional town meeting.
Oh, that's right. Before it's.
Just before SB two. I think it's a really exciting thing. And we can actually get some things for the town and not have to cost
Mhm.
the taxpayer.
It'll be real focused.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Taking 100% of those added tax dollars instead of 15%, essentially. And so as part of this process as well, once we have the finite details in place, Garth Svensson, who's a business owner in the town center and really has been involved in the town center plan since the visioning, over a decade ago.
It's almost a
Yeah, no kidding. So he's on the school board. And so once we have something concrete, a plan to go with him and have a conversation with the school board about what this is, what it means for the school. A lot of times the biggest naysaying of establishing a TIF district is that it takes money away from the schools, which it really doesn't, because the tax base stays the same. It just takes that added tax base and reinvests it in a specific geographic area. And so the schools have the same tax base, but if the town is doing things to promote commercial growth in the town center, we're reinvesting that commercial growth to support it and eventually end up with a much larger tax base being the goal that supports what the community wants and needs. And so
As soon as the TIF district disappears, either by sunsetting or because we choose to disintegrate it. All that
I
mindset.
can't remember, do we put a X number of years?
And
it's typical.
It's different.
A lot of times it's 30 years and it's frequently extended. And that's a decision of town meeting.
yeah, the legislative body could stop it too.
Yes, absolutely.
That's not part of the warrant, the timeframe.
It would be. If there was a time frame, it would be. There doesn't have to be. And these are decisions that the select board will ultimately have to make. Okay, good workshop. I've got some good notes. And so I'll aggregate everything from all of the interested parties at our last meeting in November. And so we'll try to finalize. And we don't really run a huge risk of including a lot in the development program, except we don't want to turn residents off to, oh, they're trying to build a city of Dover in the Barrington Town Center, which obviously we haven't talked about that, like that's our intent. But if they start to see a really long list of things that is on the development program, things that are on the development program. So I think it should be refined to some
We
extent.
have to remember that whatever we put down there in the center has to fit and be coordinated with the amount of wetlands too.
Absolutely.
We got some prime wetlands in there, and that's what makes it so tough.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I don't think we have any new business. Unless something's come up. New business.
I would like to just have a comment in the consideration for the next time.
Yes.
Oh,
Go.
as everybody knows, I've asked the library to cut back on it, and chair has said that now there's no place they could cut it. They could get more cuts in it, and I would just like the board to consider maybe putting the library's budget in a separate warrant item, so that the public can decide whether or not they want to spend that additional 14% on that. And so I just asked that everybody consider that. And we discussed that after we've had a chance to mull it over, because in that way there, I would feel, totally safe to let them have that additional money the way they want to have it.
I'll add that to the agenda for the 28th.
So I asked, thank you.
No one else. But for new business. Else, Ms. Capiello. Planning board.
There was not a planning board meeting since our last meeting. We have one tomorrow night, and I believe TIP is on.
Conservation was canceled last week, and we have energy committee this week on Thursday night.
I have ZBA coming up this week, and tomorrow night is also library.
I think we got some indication of what Rick is doing. Justice presentation, so covered there for Jim. You have the minutes for the ABC farm. Gratefully, I don't know about the meeting for the transfer station. School board is having a budget workshop tomorrow. Won't include very much except their discussion of their budget. Second public comment period. Then I would Go through this first. You have public comment, when you're addressed and permitted to speak, you first need to recite your name and address for the record. Visitors should address their comments to the chair and select board as a body and not to any individual member. Each speaker shall be provided a single opportunity to comment, limited to 3 minutes. Public comment, will be limited to 15 minutes. Visitors should not expect a response to their comments or questions, since the select board may not have discussed or taken a position on a matter. Public comment is not a two-way dialogue between the speakers, select board, and or the town administrator. Observe strict order and decorum. And comments that will induce disruption or disorder and permitted will not be tolerated. Thank you. Mr. Royce.
If I heard you correctly, you had some questions to when the recycling and transfer station is coming back in. It's going to be the 28th of this month at 2:00.
Yeah. And then,
That's for my memory, so I hope that's correct. I make sure.
thank you very much. Any other comments?
If you're participating virtually, you can press *6 to unmute yourself or raise your hand using the Teams feature. Wait to be recognized by the chair. I don't see anything either, Mr. Chair.
In that case, we'll end the public comment. Second. We do have personnel.
We do. Brief. Yeah, he'll stick around.
Thank you very much. We'll have a motion for non-public.
I moved to the on non-public for personnel issues.
Aye.
Okay, I'm going to turn off our camera.
No, you have to stay,
We're back.
because we're staying.
Oh,
We might need an escort out of the.
I'll double check the parking lot. but-
Get out of here, get out of here, thank you. All right, I guess we have to just by roll call, I don't think so.
We're back from non-public and we need a motion to seal the minutes for 6 months.
Okay. All right,
I move that we seal the minutes of non-public for 6 months due to personnel issues.
okay, second,
Second,
roll call vote,
Gibson, aye.
Gabriella, I.
Really,
and Trey, aye.
motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Done.
Nice work.